I, 38-year-old female, have recently been informed that my partner, 35-year-old male, has a brain tumor, but his story is full of inconsistencies, and, as insane as this may sound, I think he might be making it up. I am 23 weeks pregnant with our first child. I received a call from his childhood friend who works with him on Wednesday. He was frantic and said that he was just told by their boss that my partner has a brain tumor the size of a baseball. We were both in utter shock and disbelief. He has had issues with drug abuse and pathological lying in the past, so we both were wondering if it could be a lie. I went home and looked at his Microsoft Teams chat. He works from home quite a bit, and saw a thread with his office manager saying the following: "They're going to try stereotactic radiosurgery. Try and shrink it. Minimum positive outcome would be to slow it down. It really depends on how successful it is. If this doesn't work, they want to try laser interstitial thermal therapy. It's a really precise laser, but they'd have to cut a piece of my skull open." I confronted him about it, and he immediately got angry. He refused to cooperate, wouldn't answer my questions, and told me he didn't want me to know about it because I have enough to worry about and that he planned to take care of this on his own. He refused to acknowledge my panic and told me not to worry about it. He would not give any details about what it was called, detailed diagnosis, prognosis, treatment plan, etc. He claimed he had a doctor appointment on Friday, and I insisted on going with him to hear it for myself. He fought and finally agreed, only to tell me 24 hours later, Thursday evening, after I had requested the day off of work, that he was confused and actually did not have an appointment that day. He wouldn't say who the appointment was with or where it was at. He then said his appointment is actually on this upcoming Wednesday with a specialist at UCLA Medical Center. I'll be in Nashville on a business trip at that time, so that is quite convenient. I asked him to see some records or test results, which he refused. He said he had deleted every speck of information so I wouldn't find out. Finally, on Friday night, I got him to give me some details as follows. He has been experiencing extreme lethargy and headaches for months. At the beginning of this month, his boss found him passed out in his truck outside their office for hours, which set everything off. He made an appointment with his primary care physician, who did some blood work and found that the white blood cell count was off. He first said he did a CT scan, then said it was an MRI, and said they found a large tumor the size of a baseball under his brain. Due to its location, it's not operable, so they suggested a stereotactic radiosurgery treatment. He completed that on Thursday the 8th. Next steps are to see if that worked and potentially do more stereotactic radiosurgery treatments. That's all he knows. Again, I asked what type of tumor it was, and he said he didn't know. He would have to Google it. Finally, last night, he sent me an article on anaplastic astrocytoma and said it was grade 3. He gave no other details and said he won't even read the article. He has been incredibly cold and detached regarding this, which has me feeling insanely confused. Our son is due in December, and he's shown zero emotion or empathy about how this could affect me or our child. When pleading with him, I mentioned our son growing up without a father, and he said, "Whatever, I have life insurance." I understand that this could be a reaction to the fear and trauma of such a diagnosis, but it seems pretty extreme. He threatened to leave when I mentioned telling his mother, and continues to insist he's just going to take care of it, and I should not worry. But at this point, even if he didn't want me to know, the cat is out of the bag, and I feel it's only normal to now share the information so I can process and plan accordingly. We rely on his income to survive, and if this is real, I don't know if he will be able to work. Backstory on the lying is that we met on Hinge 3 years ago. He told me he owned a company, owned properties, did work in Romania, just things that didn't add up. It was all too fantastical. When I would press him for proof, he'd dig his heels in deeper and even produce clearly fake documents as supporting evidence. It all came to a head a few months later when he got in a car accident and his mother found out he was on drugs. I finally met his mother, father, and best friend, the one previously mentioned, and they all confirmed his tendency to tell tall tales. His drug of choice is benzodiazepines. We broke up for a while, but then he got his act together and begged for me back. Went to therapy, did what I asked him to do, and I agreed to let bygones be bygones and start fresh. Since then, things have been great. We moved in together and decided to start a family. The baby was planned, and we've both been really excited about it. So, while it may seem insane for this to be a lie, I could also fathom a story where he's back on the benzodiazepines heavily and hasn't been performing at work. He gets called out by his boss and makes up this story to cover his behind and save his job. This is why he doesn't tell me or his best friend. He figures this will buy him some time until he can get back on track and then tell his boss, "Great news, the cancer is clear," and just move forward without me ever finding out. Almost forgot the lack of detail he's provided, the seemingly lightning speed process from discovery to stereotactic radiosurgery treatment, no evident downtime from treatment, zero available medical records, online portals, appointment reminders, etc. And his complete lack of emotion has me stuck in disbelief. Honestly, I'd give anything for this to be a lie, and unless I can see some concrete evidence from him, my brain just cannot accept it. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. My dad and my sister both had brain cancer. Dad had glioblastoma and sister anaplastic astrocytoma, and I also work in oncology. He wouldn't have an actual diagnosis of anaplastic astrocytoma grade 3 without a tissue biopsy. So based only on CT or MRI, they couldn't accurately say you have an anaplastic astrocytoma grade 3. They would say, "We suspect you have a high-grade glioma that is inoperable," not even going to address anything other than that in your post. I am 97% sure he's lying unless he's seeing a psychic physician. My dad's neurosurgeon was able to tell my dad's diagnosis based on imaging because my dad's was the most aggressive type of brain cancer. Comment 2. He'd dig his heels in deeper and even produce clearly fake documents as supporting evidence. Brace yourself for some letters from his oncologist to suddenly and magically pop up as proof. Bear in mind, you don't actually have to get him to admit he's lying. Often people feel helpless when faced with someone they know is lying, but there isn't any concrete evidence, and the liar won't ever admit it, as if they sort of have to believe the lies until they get solid proof. But that's nonsense. You know he is, and he knows he is, so whether he admits it or not doesn't change the facts. Now for the update. It's been almost a week since I last updated, and things have only gotten more complicated. My partner still hasn't shared any solid info about his health, saying he doesn't want to burden me. I found out he missed another doctor's appointment, claiming he was confused about the schedule. I decided to reach out to his childhood friend, who first told me about the tumor. The friend was evasive, but mentioned he had seen my partner look unwell recently. I started looking for a way to get more info myself. I checked our shared calendar and noticed an appointment listed for a cancer specialist I hadn't seen before. I called the office to confirm the appointment and learned my partner never showed up. My partner came home late one night, smelling like alcohol. I confronted him about the missed appointment, and he lashed out, saying I was being paranoid. The argument got worse, and he threatened to leave if I didn't trust him. I decided to go to my next prenatal checkup alone and mention my partner's situation to my doctor. The doctor was concerned about my partner's health and suggested I consider his history with drugs. I went home and found my partner packing a bag. He said he was going to stay with his friend for a few days to clear his head. I pressed him for details, but he shut down and left anyway. The next day, I got a call from his friend, who told me my partner had been staying with him for the past 2 nights. I drove over to his friend's place, but found my partner wasn't there. His friend seemed uncomfortable talking about it and asked me to leave. Later that week, I went to a family gathering for my sister's birthday. My parents were there, and they noticed I seemed off. I ended up sharing some details about my partner's situation, and they were concerned. My dad offered to help me talk to my partner, but I declined. I got a text from my partner saying he wanted to meet up and talk. We agreed to meet at a diner near his friend's house. He arrived looking disheveled and more tired than ever. During our conversation, he finally admitted he's been using again. He mentioned he was trying to get help but wasn't ready to face it. He promised he'd go to a treatment program but didn't commit to a timeline. A few days later, I got a call from his friend saying my partner had been spotted out late again. I decided to give him space, but also reached out to a support group for expectant mothers. I went to a meeting and found some comfort in sharing my experiences with others. Edit. My partner went to a rehab program after some time. He had a health scare during treatment and finally got a brain scan. It showed a tumor, and he's now getting treatment. Am I the idiot for confronting my husband about his creepy behavior with his cousin and refusing to pretend everything is fine? I don't know what to do if I should throw away my almost 9-year marriage because of this. My husband, his cousin, sent me screenshots of him begging her for unclothed photos. He even paid her when we are struggling to even buy gasoline. He made me send her the money, saying she had an emergency. I feel disgusted, and I'm ready to walk away. My mother says it's not worth our marriage and that it can be fixed. Please help me. Is this fixable? How do I react without blowing everything up, which I was going to do before my mom's advice? To add, thank you so much for everyone's support and validation. I'm reading through all the comments and want to reply, but I'm just so mentally exhausted and still processing it all. I think I always knew there was no going back, but my mother, who was absent all my life and I've recently let back in, filled my head with so much doubt and fear. At the bottom of it, I wanted her to be right because it hurts so much to think where this has to go. To answer a few questions, we got together when I was 18 and he was 21. I'll be 27 soon, and we are at almost 9 years, but technically 8, so I hope that clears up a few comments. I also realized it sounds like he forced me to send it, but I control all the finances, apps, and cash because we are in debt due to his poor decisions and discipline, and I'm desperately trying to keep our heads above water. I'm not trying to make him a villain. Also, his cousin is around his age. They grew up together, and she has a child in middle school. They are both disgusting. No, I don't know if she did send it, but in the messages, she certainly played along and didn't call him out or anything. No, she did not return the money either. The kid question. No kids, but we have cats. Hopefully he will leave, but if I have to be the one to do it, then I might not be able to take them right away. Although, I don't think he will fight for them. To those who think this is fake, I wish with all my heart it was. I wish I could wake up and that this was a nightmare. Now for an update. I confronted him. It was all so horrible, and yet I laughed a few times through the tears at his audacity. He pulled all the textbook gaslighting. She seduced me. She initiated it. We don't have intimacy enough. You've rejected me. I felt lonely. I have been depressed. I was vulnerable, and it was a one-time mistake, etc. With every word he spoke, he dug the hole deeper and just reaffirmed what a terrible person he was, and how foolish I was to even consider this was salvageable. I told my mom everything was okay. I clearly don't have her support, and I'm inexperienced, so I don't want her advice. I guess I will deal with her when the bomb drops. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Holy smokes, that is absolutely disgusting. Not just cheating, but with his cousin. Immediate divorce for me. That is depraved. I'm so sorry, original poster. Comment 2. That is considered cheating. My lawyer said the same thing for this type of situation. I would leave. Now for the update. I'm back with an update. It's been a month since the whole confrontation with my husband, and honestly, it's like I've been living in this weird state of avoidance. He tries to have these deep conversations, and it's like, nope, not happening. We went to a family birthday party for his uncle, and let me tell you, I was on edge the whole time. The vibe was off, to say the least. Family members were trying to talk to me, and I was just giving them one-word answers. My husband was acting all friendly with his cousin, and it made me feel so uncomfortable. Like, why are you being so chummy with her? During the party, the cousin made this comment about our money problems, and I was just like, wow, how invasive can you get? I overheard my husband laughing with her about private jokes, and it just made me more suspicious. I couldn't take it anymore, so I confronted him about the cousin's comments, and of course, it led to another argument. He just dismissed my concerns, saying it was all in good fun and that I was overreacting. So I decided to take a break and went for a walk around the neighborhood. As luck would have it, I ran into a neighbor who casually mentioned my husband's late-night activities. Apparently, he's been leaving the house without explanation, and she's noticed. A week later, we went to a holiday dinner at my parents' house. My mom questioned why I seemed so distant, and it was like she was hinting that I should give my husband another chance. During dinner, my husband got this text that he quickly tried to hide from me, and it raised my suspicion even more. After dinner, I checked our shared phone bill out of curiosity and found multiple messages from an unknown number. Red flag. I confronted him again about the messages, and it just led to more gaslighting. He claimed it was just a wrong number and that I was being paranoid. Yeah, sure, buddy. Feeling trapped, I decided to do some investigating on my own. I found out that the unknown number belonged to a woman in our area, and my anxiety went through the roof. At a family gathering, I noticed my husband texting late at night, and when I asked about it, he claimed it was work-related. I decided to confront him about his late-night behavior, but he just deflected. A few days later, I caught him on a video call with the cousin, just laughing and joking away. He said they were just catching up, but I felt so uneasy about it. The following weekend, we went to a wedding where the cousin was a bridesmaid. During the reception, she pulled my husband aside for a long chat, and it just felt so inappropriate. I tried to talk to other guests, but I kept glancing at them. After the wedding, I told my husband how uncomfortable I felt, but he just brushed it off like it was nothing. I decided to keep a closer eye on his phone because honestly, I felt justified in my actions. A week later, I found more messages from the unknown number, and this time they had photos. At a family brunch, my mom suggested that we should all go on a trip together to bond, and I was just like, sure, why not? I decided to go along with it to keep up appearances for my family. The day before the trip, I confronted my husband one last time about his behavior. He denied everything again and claimed that I was being dramatic and ruining our plans. So here I am, packing for the trip. Edit, I want to clarify some things because the comments have been really helpful. First, I don't have concrete proof of an affair, just a lot of red flags. The woman behind the unknown number is new in our area and I don't know her. Yes, my husband has a history of poor choices, but nothing like this. The cousin is married too, which adds to my confusion. As for my mom, she's been distant my whole life, so her recent involvement is new and complicated for me. Finally, about the cats, they're both mine, and my husband knows that. I'll keep you all posted after the trip. Am I the idiot for cutting off my best friend after she kept making inappropriate jokes about my husband? My best friend, let's call her Anne, and I became close since the start of medical school. We have been best friends for 7 years now. She was my maid of honor at my wedding, and we're still close to this day. My then boyfriend, let's call him Jim, now my husband, came into the picture 4 years ago. Naturally, before my boyfriend became my husband, Anne, along with our other best friend, would hang out, and eventually, the four of us became close. I'm happy that my friends really liked my then boyfriend Jim, now my husband, since they've seen the awful men I dated before. They've seen how great of a catch Jim is. He's really not the typical jerk you meet. They would sometimes jokingly say that he really is the husband of the group, which is fine by me because he really cares about all of us, and he's just sweet like that. I promise you, it's just his personality and no malice on his part. We would just randomly hang out at each other's homes, and Jim would cook for us since he's a great chef and he cooks for his other friend groups as well. Typical hangouts outside too. Naturally, Jim became part of the group. So now the dilemma is, when we get together with my friends, Anne would make comments like, "If you were single, Jim, I would have married you instead." Or, "What if we met before you met my name? I would have married you right then." I would comment back jokingly, "What if you leave instead?" and then laugh it off. These comments would start when my best friends would compliment our relationship and express how happy they are for us and how lucky I am with Jim, etc., which is normal because my friends have always been endearing. But nowadays, I don't know how to deal with or react to it because she's my best friend, and I talk to her about everything except about my husband, since I never share our personal stuff with anyone. It's okay to compliment the relationship, but I just don't like how she makes comments like that. I shared this with my husband before, since this happened once in the past already, before we even got married. He got the hint and was always distant with her. He is very sensitive to my feelings and would just laugh off her comments when she says them. But I want to know about my best friend and how to deal with her. Now for a note, a lot of you were commenting that Jim should have shut her down. Well, he already did when she made comments like this before we got married. Her comment then was, "Do you have a twin or can I clone you? I'd marry that." And my husband said, "I'm sure you'll find someone who's just perfect for you and not me. Don't worry, we'll try to find you someone." This was a repeat, and we thought it had already stopped. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You can cut off that friend completely, but she would always maintain she never meant anything wrong. If you want to keep that friend around, you cannot control what she says. You can have a discussion with her in private about how you don't like the comments. However, your friendship is bound to change. It won't be as deep as before. If it makes you uncomfortable, you have the right to speak up. Anything you do here is valid. Comment 2. She envied you. This joke is actually her, not so secret desire. I would stay away from her. I had a best friend similar to that, except that I trusted and loved her like a sister and didn't think she was interested in my husband in that way. Joke on me, because my ex and she both left their spouses of 18 years to be together. She now lives the comfortable life she always wanted, my previous life. Now for the update. 3 days after I posted about the weird situation with my best friend and my husband Jim and I went to a birthday party for one of our friends. It was supposed to be fun, but there was this weird, heavy vibe hanging over me the whole time. I felt super tense. Of course, Anne was invited too, because they're all in this group together. She's been like a sister to me. I never thought we would get to this point, but here we are. Anne was already at the party when we got there, and she had that same old big smile on her face, the one that always made me feel welcomed. But I felt sick in my stomach. I knew I had to be nice and keep things light, so I forced a smile and acted like everything was fine. During the party, Anne made this joke about how Jim was the best catch and how lucky I was. Jim chuckled, but he didn't engage in the conversation, and I just smiled, trying to keep the mood light. The night dragged on, but I felt like I was just going through the motions. Later on, I noticed Anne pulling Jim aside for a private chat. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see her animatedly talking and gesturing. I felt this knot in my stomach as I watched them. After a while, Jim came back to me, and I tried to act normal, but deep down, I was a mess. I didn't want to ruin the party for everyone else, so I just smiled and pretended that everything was fine. A little later, Anne came over to me with a drink and suggested we do a toast to friendship. I thought it was a good idea, so I went along with it. But then she raised her glass and wished that she could find someone as great as Jim. I was taken aback. I noticed Jim looking uncomfortable, and he quickly changed the subject to sports. I could feel the tension in the air, but I didn't want to address it right then and there, so I let it go. After the party, Jim and I drove home in silence. I could tell he was deep in thought, and I didn't want to make it worse, so I just let him be. The next day, I got a text from Anne asking to meet for coffee. I didn't really want to, but I thought it might help clear the air, so I reluctantly agreed. When we met at the coffee shop, the first thing Anne did was bring up the jokes again. She said she was just trying to be funny, and when I mentioned that it made me uncomfortable, she brushed it off and said it was all in good fun. I tried to change the subject because I didn't want to get into it again, but she kept pressing for details about my relationship with Jim. She even suggested that all of us should go on a group trip together, saying it would be fun to travel as friends. That made me uneasy, especially after everything that had happened. I mentioned it to Jim later, and he was pretty strong about not wanting to go if Anne was going to be there. I was surprised by his reaction, but I agreed that we should talk about it later. A few days passed, and I found out through social media that Anne was planning the trip with a few other friends, but Jim and I weren't invited. That hurt. I wasn't going to lie about it. At a family dinner a little while later, my parents asked about Anne, and it led to an awkward moment. I had to explain the situation to them, and my mom suggested that we invite Anne to the next family gathering to clear things up. I was a little hesitant about that, but we decided to do it. The next time we gathered, Anne showed up acting like nothing was wrong. During dinner, she made another comment about Jim, jokingly asking if he'd ever consider being single. My brother tried to make a lighthearted comment to break the awkwardness, but it didn't really work. Jim seemed annoyed and tried to change the subject. But then, Anne kept pushing and asked Jim if he'd ever thought about dating someone else. The room went silent, and everyone turned to look at me. I was stunned. Anne seemed surprised too, but then she made this snarky remark about being honest. That's when Jim finally spoke up and told her that her comments were inappropriate and hurtful. Anne stormed out of the house, leaving everyone in shock. I didn't know what to say or do. My family was silent. We decided to take a break from seeing Anne for a while and focus on our relationship. We started spending more time with other friends, and honestly, it felt refreshing. We were able to reconnect and just enjoy each other's company without all the drama. Thank you for reading. Edit. A lot of people are asking me about what I talked about with my husband after the party. To be honest, we didn't have a deep discussion. Jim and I were both kind of avoiding the topic because we didn't want to make things worse, but we agreed that I would talk to Anne about her comments. That led to the coffee meeting where she brushed off my concerns. A few people have asked if I have a history of jealousy or if there's anything else going on, and no, I don't. I've never had issues with my friends and their partners, and I've never felt jealous of anyone. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.